Happy Monday, everybody. I hope you had a great start to your 2021. Us at the African Mirror team are very excited to be back on air again. And even so, because we have been prepping this amazing project that we want to share contents about and inside information about Africa. And we want to name it Decolonization Through Spirituality. We're going to have some guests with us from Zimbabwe and from Ghana and obviously from Burundi, because I'm from Burundi myself. And we're going to be sharing, like relevant topics about spirituality, relevant topics about culture within the African continent. Welcome to the African Mirror 2021. Kia ora, good evening, bonsoir, mwiriwe, magadini, bonjour, ngaramute, depending on where you are based in this beautiful universe. Just like I mentioned before, we have been prepping this project called the Decolonization Through Spirituality, which we're going to talk more about the spirituality and the culture of the continent of Africa. And because we're going to be basing all our experiences from Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Burundi, we thought at the African Mirror that we should give you a little bit of a description or a little bit of an idea of where Burundi is and what it is all about. Because let's face it, I'm from Burundi. I'm the daughter of Burundi, the motherland within the motherland. So I thought I would give you a little bit of facts to let you know, to get you an opportunity to understand when we get into that big topic of where I will be coming from, and we'll be putting some things on our stories, or we'll be going to give you a little bit of description about Zimbabwe and about Ghana, so you can actually familiarize yourself with these countries where we're going to be digging deeper of the way our ancestors have been living before Christianity was brought to Africa. So Burundi, as your girl talking to you, I am from Burundi. I was born in Burundi and I was raised in Burundi before Aotearoa, New Zealand, adopted me as its daughter. Burundi is a small landlocked country in the African Eastern and Central Great Lakes region, and we share borders with DRC, which is the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda, and Tanzania. It is known as the Heart of Africa, and it stretches over 27,834 kilometers squared, and it's really known and famous for its rich and varied natural landscape characterized by picturesque lakes, rivers, reserves, grasslands, national parks, and mountain terrains. If I was to say something about the national parks, one of the culture shock that I got when I came here in Aotearoa, it was that my friends would be like, "Oh, do you want to go and hang out into the park?" And I'm like, "What do you mean into the park?" Yeah, where I come from, parks are full of wildlife. Parks, you can't go there until you've got a guide that is actually leading you and telling you this is where the lions live. Don't do this, because if you do that, then you're going to call that animal to come and attack you. And stretching on that one, Burundi's wildlife is full of lions, antelopes, buffaloes, crocodiles, hippos. I thought they were elephants, because I've seen them, but based on the data that I have collected so far, that's all I got. But anyway, I thought there were elephants over there, and I also thought there were gorillas. I'm not sure why the gorillas are not in here, but who knows? So going back into giving you an idea of what Burundi is all about, like I said, it's the heart of Africa. Its population is estimated at 10.11 million by the statistics in 2016, and the major ethnic groups of Burundi is broken down as, let's say we've got those we call Abahutu, and those we call Abatutsi, and those we call Abatwa. So the majority of Burundians are made out of 84% of Abahutu and 14% of Abatutsi and 1% of Abatwa. To be honest with you, though, and the whole purpose of me and my team, broadcasting this show to give you relevant information about Burundi is the fact that for me personally, I don't believe in why we are broken down as such in ethnic groups, because the basic of it all has actually brought Burundians to have conflicts amongst themselves. This is a country that's got one people. This is a country that speaks one language. Personally, I don't understand why we are broken down like that. And if you were to meet me on the street tomorrow in Aotearoa, New Zealand, don't please ask me if I'm a Tutsi or Hutu or a Twa, because I am Burundian. So going to looking at the facts of why I believe that as Burundians being in Burundi or being in the diaspora, we should not be identified ourselves according to our ethnic groups. It's because we've got one culture, a culture that is actually very deep in local traditions and with our surrounding, like neighbors, countries, we get influence of what is going out there. It comes to music, it comes to art. We share the same thing because we are close by. It's a landlocked kind of a country. So, we can just walk as if you are going from one suburb here to another suburb. It's almost like walking from one suburb to another, apart from the fact that you might have to show your papers. But that is how close we are into each other. So they are intertwined into culture. What's happening in the Congo is something that might affect or impact the Burundian people, or what is happening in Burundi might be applied or adopted by the Congolese people, vice versa with Tanzania and with Rwanda. So the culture in Burundi is very based on local traditions. There are so much I can talk about when it comes to like the manners, like the customs, like how we behave towards each other, the basics of it all going back to the spirit of Ubuntu. But I'm just going to be giving you just a little idea about how Burundi is all about, because we're going to go deep into it with our upcoming episode about decolonization through spirituality. But however, I'm just going to be mentioning that when it comes to Burundi, we've got cultures that are mainly based on songs and dances and storytelling and legends. For instance, like our shepherds, like when it comes to farming or looking after herds in Burundi, I grew up seeing shepherds taking their cows outside, spending a day out there. Comes rain, comes sun, they will take those cows out there, and when they're bringing them back home, they will be singing to them. So they are like what I might call pastoral stories or songs that they will sing to this herd as they're coming back home, in terms of like cherishing them, in terms of like giving that value to the relationship that they have between the human beings and the animals, because they know what the animals are going to be bringing back to them, bringing back to their family, bringing back into the economy of the Burundi. When it comes to also storytelling, I remember being just like a child and finding out that not finding out, but that's how it has always been, like living with my cousins from like my mother's side, from my father's side, and we were like really like kilometers far away. And I remember like they will come to my home, and then we'll probably eat dinner, and then they will take them back home under the moonlight, and then we take them home, and then they will take us back home again, and then we go home, and then we will sit on this mat called Ikirago, and then our mother will sit down there and they will tell us stories before we go to bed. These stories were full of like moral lessons. Like they will use characters as animal. They will chant during that tale as they're telling us, young people, young children to educate us of what we should be doing or what we should not be doing through tales. It was not that we were stuck on TV and we were watching and playing games and we were like learning how to fight within games. It was more so like the spirit of Ubuntu, like, look, don't disobey your parents. Look, if this happens, then you do that, behave in a certain manner because the person who's next to you is the same as yourself, regardless of if you're coming from a privileged background or your family can do better than another family. The whole point was to just use these tales and these chants and tell us about how to become, disciplined adults and loving adults and considering adults. So they will also tell us tales about, the lifestyles of our ancestors, what they had to do for us to be where we are, which I found that is very fundamental to any Burundian out there. If you did not, had an opportunity to grow up in Burundi and have your mother or your grandmother, your father or your grandparent just sitting down with you and then relating to you what they went through and what their parents have done for us to be where we are. So we've got such a culture in Burundi, breathing it over it because we're going to go, deep into it with upcoming episodes. The other thing I wanted to touch on when it comes to like a Burundi cultural art and music is this beautiful, I'm pretty sure that if you've ever made it to Womad, you might have seen them, the African drummers. We've got drums in Burundi, there are like 12 of them, and they all have, different significant meanings to them. And when they're drumming them, like it's almost like a split, like 6 drummers, they will be doing one beat and the other 6 drummers will be doing another beat, but it's all merged together and produces this beautiful sound that even right now, sometimes I get really pissed off, especially when I hear some people want to imitate it and remix it and bring in something that is so irrelevant to it, because those Burundian drummers, they have almost like a spiritual meaning to it. This was sacred. This was reserved for the king. But now we enjoy it whenever we've got any wedding, any family commitment, any celebration somewhere. You can actually get them to come and share with you and actually give you that enthusiasm, because when you are sitting there and you see them drumming and you see how they're complementing each other even though they're doing different beats, and you see the lead drummer in front and he's just dancing and jumping up and down. We're going to put some pictures up here or maybe bring some links to it for you to actually understand what we're talking about. And it's well acknowledged that most of the African, African countries, they do have the, sort of drums and drumming going on, which is different to the Burundian one. And this might be a little bit biased because I'm from Burundi, but I think like the Burundian drummers are the best anyway. Just, putting it out there. It's an article fact. But these drums of Burundi, you do need to actually look into them. And that's, because even the drumming of it all was not just like, oh, let's just produce music. Now, we're going to go into it. One of them has this role, and this is what they were drummed for. This will be drummed because they wanted to pray to the gods to bring this or harvest or during the drought or something like that. We can go so much into it to let you know what actually these drums were meant for, and they rose to this date. In terms of art, there's so much I can talk about. I'm just going to pull up some pictures so you can see what I'm talking about. But there is like one of the beautiful things that you will see about the art of Africa is into, waving, like basket wavings. And they are like pottery. There is like statues making. They are like, it's actually so much that I want to just a little bit, give you a brief of what it is all about, because we're going to get deep into it later on in these shows. Yeah, so we've got us in Burundi, and it's very nice and very beautiful. And to give you an example, the thing you see here behind is all from Burundi, and it was made in Burundi, and that's the weaving that I'm trying to actually relate to. So we make them in baskets, different types, different forms, just trying to give a little bit of like to the Burundian, artist. When it comes to food, we eat quite, heaps of food. You find bananas. We eat bananas in different ways. We boil them. We make fries. We've got different type of bananas where you can eat them as like the yellow bananas, the small bananas. We can make alcohol out of that bananas, but it's not the same. We've got different type of bananas that we have in Burundi. Some of them are for alcohol, some of them is for eating, and some of them is for cooking, some of them is for making, cakes, like we do it here anyway. But there is potatoes, various like types of potatoes. We've got also like beans. We eat beans and rice, and we've got fish, which is called mukeke. It's actually unfortunate. I think I've mentioned it in one of my previous episodes, that if I really, if there was anything that I can bless my chosen family here in Atorewa, I will bring them mukeke. It's amazing. And on that topic, then brings me back to this Lake Tanganyika, because that's where we get this fish from. Lake Tanganyika, it goes through, like a certain part of Burundi, and it flies into the River Nile, and so forth and so forth. It is the second largest lake in the African continent, which covers a total or area of 32,000 kilometers squared. And it also is the second largest freshwater reservoir and second deepest river in the world, with a depth of 1,400 meters. Lake Tanganyika also boasts an impressive biodiversity, with a wide assortment of around 1,300 different plants and animal species. There is so much, it's beautiful, and Lake Tanganyika has been valued by Burundians, because you can, if you've got your energy, you can wake up in the morning and you can go and fish, you can feed your family, you can go and fish, and you can make it a business. It contributes to the economy. Later on, it's been exploited. We're going to look into that also more in the upcoming episodes. When it comes to the climate, like one of the other things that I have been struggling to actually get used here in Atarewa, which is the mother that has adopted me, right? It's the climate. Like, whenever it's hot, I'm like, oh, yes, but this is burning. Whenever it's cold, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even go outside. In Burundi, we've got two climates, and that's probably why inside of me, I can't not adjust to this climate, because I was raised within just two climates, which is like two seasons in the country: the dry season, which goes from June to September, and the rainy season, which goes from February to May. But when it's raining, it's beautifully hot. It makes you really square. It gives you this baby skin. And when it rains, you feel like you just want to take off your clothes and just like standing there like a child. And I remember like coming back from school with all the uniforms, and I'm coming home and it's raining and everybody's taking shelter. But we as kids, we were like, yeah, play with like in the rain, and we come back home and we just like making our uniforms all dirty, and we get home and we get a bit of a correction from mother, because now we're giving her more work to do. If you see what I mean, there were no washing machines, so she had to wash it, So that I remember about that season. But you know what I mean? It was so cool to just like, even being here, reflect back on how stupid children can be and how much work that we had to give our parents. But that's the culture, and we were children, and that's what life in Burundi is all about. So when it comes to this other topic that I want talk more about decolonization through spirituality, I want to just give you a little bit of facts that I have found on some website, and we're gonna have the sources in the show notes, so you don't believe our word for it, and you can actually go and look it out yourself. So, like for instance, according to the Embassy of Burundi in Germany, though, when it comes to spirituality, the vast majority of Burundians are Christians, and they under the umbrella of like 75%, with 20% of Burundian that follows, other African religions, including Muslims. I'm still a little bit wanting to figure out exactly when they say 20% is for the Burundian that follow African religions, because this brings me back as well, like in the time of our ancestors, the pre-colonial region of Burundi before the colonizer. What was it all about? And this is like an important part that we're going to be talking about within our next show. From what we know, based on the information, the really, rare information that is out there, because unfortunately, when it comes to Burundi, we kind of like found ourselves with not much information out there that can tell us of, the pre-colonial times. Maybe because people then were not too much into writing or whatever, but they had their own way of passing on their messages. We do not know what happened, but we found ourselves with like not being able to access, information about how our ancestors before the colonizer, was like. We are trying right now, and we're doing all the best to put it all together, but it's kind of hard to actually like tap it in there and get access to it. So we have this beautiful thing that we get to learn at school. Even like I was talking with our elders, they tell us about this person called Kiranga. Kiranga, as according to some that are out there, was like considered as like the man god. Like it was kind of hard maybe at that time, even still today, for people to believe in a God they can't see, they can't touch, they can't talk to. They needed someone who can talk back to them. They needed someone they can come and complain to. They needed to do something to feel like their prayers are being heard. Hence this man god called Kiranga, who once was like a male representative or male figures, and then it turned into like female figures. And just to give you an example, just a little example of how important this person was, as I was reading, I came across a story which was talking about how when, for instance, people are fighting, this woman that was acknowledged as Kiranga, the man king, man god figure, will come outside, and she'll put her hands on her breast, and she will tell them not to fight, and they will listen to her as the mother of, or as the channel of God. They will be like, actually, God is visiting us through a human body, so we should stop actually fighting. And those are the things that I'm thinking, that if you are Burundian who were not raised in Burundi and you are in the diaspora, maybe you need to pay a little bit of attention to it. Yes, we all like have these other options like Christianity or Muslim or something, and I'm not going against them. I'm just trying to say, can we have this opportunity to look back and see, can you have a choice actually to see, because there was a faith going on in Burundi. There was a structure of how things were done in Burundi. So was this Kiranga useful to Burundians? So was this Kiranga impactful into the lives of Burundians? Then if so, why do we not have that opportunity to actually also get to know how this worked, and also give us the right of choice? These also are the things that we're going to talk about in the next episode. When it comes to like Burundi, because Burundi was colonized by few countries, and the latest one was Belgium. So we speak French in Burundi, and then the currency actually is called the Burundian franc, BIF. So it's not even like the Burundian money; it still has that French thing on the top of it. The core of Burundian economy is actually agriculture, and we produce coffee, tea, sugar, cotton, amongst every other things that we harvest in Burundi for average family. The coffee and tea, sugar are part of the products that are exported outside of Burundi, and that builds the economy of Burundi. Before we get to any further, I wanted to just give you a little bit of something that I found out on the BBC World Africa / Burundi. This is like a chronology of key events about Burundi. So this is like pre-1300s. Remember me, I'm talking about the population of Burundi, how it is divided into Abahutu, Abatutsi, Nabatwa. Like in English, you say Hutu, Tutsis, and Twa. But the way we say it in Burundi is Abahutu, Abatutsi, Nabatwa, which is I don't believe anyway, like I mentioned, we are all Burundians, then there's no reason why we should be divided. But then chronologically, the pre-1300s, that's when the Abahutu people settled in the region, according to the BBC World Africa / Burundi News. In the 1400s, the Tutsi settled in Burundi. In the 1500s, the district of Burundi was then a kingdom. In the 1819, the kingdom of Urundi, because then what I should probably mention right now is that way before the colonizer, Burundi and Rwanda was one country. So we've got Burundi and we've got Rwanda. We've got the same language. We've got pretty much the same, similar manners, culture, like ceremonies. Everything is all the same. Even the language. People from Burundi can talk to the people from Rwanda. Just like a little bit of an accent, like a person from the north of Atorewa might have a different accent to a person who's from the south, or vice versa in Europe. I am not telling you something that you do not know. But we were called Rwanda Urundi, and then we got separated. So in the 1980s, the kingdoms of Urundi, because that's what it was called then, and Rwanda became under the Germany East Africa, incorporated into the German East Africa. 1916, then the Belgian army occupied the area. In the 1923, Belgium received League of Nations mandate to administer Rwanda Urundi. In 1959-1961, it was when Burundi was actually preparing to get its independence, which it got in the 1962. As I mentioned before, Burundi is very much like a Christian oriented, and we'll be coming from school, and then you will see all these like beautiful like plantation with like trees of oranges and mangoes and all these fruits that just well looked after, and the fence was not high enough, and we being kids, being naughty and everything, we'll be like, we're going to do something about this. So we form a group, and we're like, you can stand guard and you go and pick them. So we will be like, stupid kids going and climbing to these trees and trying to steal, these mangoes and these oranges and mandarins from the priests, because these plantations belong to the priests, because they will look after it so well. And we'll go in there, and then we're like, sweet, we're going to wait for the signal if, because these plantations were looked after by like security guards, but we're just like, because they were looking so yummy from outside, and we're coming from school, and it's not, we still have a little bit to go, and we just like sneak in there. Some of us, we use our uniform and we're just getting into trees and putting them in our uniforms. And then, the security guards will see us and will come after us and will run. And imagine, so we are running with this part of your shirt, which has got all the mangoes and on the mandarins and all the oranges. And you are running because someone is running after you and you have to still jump a fence. Yeah. And you'll be there trying to throw them, over the fence, and then you have to get over it before you get caught by the security guard. I dare you do that right now, because that's the childhood that I miss. When I even look here, I'm like, oh yeah, these children should be out there. Like, it's okay. Like, I broke my hand or my thing because I was just doing up to these naughty things, and I miss that. And I miss being in that environment where you dare to do something. Even when you're hungry, you're like, man, I can see them, they are right there, I'm just gonna go and just have one or two. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Like, I'm not a master thief, but I just want to go and get one or two of those things. But we would just like conspire within these, young brains, we just want that mango, we just want that orange, we're just gonna go and get it. And sometimes we end up with nothing. Sometimes you end up with cuts on your legs because you had to jump over the fence. But this is what life in Burundi feels like. Again, I want to say something about even though we were, like I mentioned before, like we were living with like our aunties and our uncles. So we were so close to our cousins from my mother's side, from my dad's side, and our grandparents were not far away from them. So when we would go to our grandparents, and sometimes like our granddad would be like, oh, look at all these beautiful, granddaughters of mine. I want you guys to dance for me. If you dance for me, I'm going to give you like a sip of this drink because you have done well. So we will be like all these like little children trying to compete against each other to satisfy our granddad so that he can be like, you are so he was the judge. And that is happening like as we're growing up, inspiring us to actually keep that joy going through dancing, through singing, through, doing things together. Even though we're competing against each other, we're still doing things together. Yeah. Those are the things that I also miss, because when we will be there with our grandparents, it will be like, they will have a river. And this is one fact that actually people don't even consider, is that even though we have like organizations in Burundi or that in Africa telling us that, yes, it's true, we build wells, we build clean water. But I know growing up, even being at my granddad and my grandmom's house, they will not drink water from the river just like that. They will boil it and they will let it rest, and then they will drink it the next day, because they were also intelligent enough to know that it's not clean enough. So I remember also walking, and I miss those times, walking to the river to get the river. And that's how you can see like Burundians, that's also another trait about Burundians and Africans, hold the pot on their head and they walk. It was also like almost like a competition with between all our cousins going to the river to get water, because we wanted to impress our grandparents, and we have them on our head, and we're just walking like we're modeling with our pots on our head, go home. And that, for me, that's why sometimes I come and say, having an opportunity to walk here, to go there, to fetch water, it's not really a bad thing, because sometimes you end up even exercising, because then you also end up bonding with other people you're going to that river with to fetch that water. So things like that for me are very conscious. They are very real. They are very basics. They are very simple, but they are the most important part of life. So this is Oracle, and you've been tuned in into the African Mirror. We will be coming back next week with a very deep concept and a very deep topic about decolonization through spirituality, with guests from Zimbabwe and Ghana. Keep it locked. We see you next week.